Major news coming out of New York. With all the bad news happening in the world right now, this is good news. So listen up. Cuomo has conceded the primary to Zoran Mamdani. Jolly, it's just a primary. Yes, but historically speaking, whoever wins the Democratic primary typically goes on to become the mayor of New York. But you need to understand the implications of Zoran Mamdani beating out Cuomo. Let me explain. First of all, Cuomo is a household name in New York versus Mamdani, who was relatively unknown. Second of all, Cuomo is very much old guard, Republican-leaning, moderate, conservative, Democrat, same old tired bullshit. Mamdani is a democratic socialist. He brings brand new ideas to the table that, while they are great ideas, scare people because they are unfamiliar ideas. So they have to be explained and sold to the masses. And listen, these are really good ideas. People just typically don't understand them at face value. And number three, Islamophobia runs rampant in this country, and they were playing that card hard against Zoran Mamdani. Also, all the big money donors were tossing all their big money at Cuomo. But it looks pretty clear that this primary is going to go to Zoran Mamdani, so much so that Cuomo said he won. Please understand that this has implications to the entire Democratic Party. So elected Democratic representatives, listen up. The people are tired of the old guard. The new guard is the future. Stop fighting it. Stop fighting this change and you'll stop losing. Congratulations, Zoran Mamdani. Congratulations, New York.
News, as did the New York Post. So anybody who knows how bad New York can get all came out against Mamdani because a 33-year-old with zero experience running anything except a little office with 5 employees should not be running the city of New York.
Donald Trump is president of the United States. His experience was being on The Apprentice. He's head of the Pentagon. He was experienced being a weekend anchor on Fox. Are you kidding me? He's got Dr. Oz is in his administration. Dr. Oz,
you're leaving out something. He's a 33-year-old socialist who's never run a popsicle stand.
He's literally in city government right now. Sorry. After Donald Trump, I'm sorry, after Donald Trump and his pinky in the brain administration, no one ever gets to talk about qualifications.
Socialism will not save
the bottom line is what I want to ask you a question. What is your evidence that Mamdani would return New York City to the 1970s hellhole Times Square? What is your evidence?
It's very simple. So he wants to raise taxes on people who make the most money. What eventually is going to happen is you're going to lose that tax base. Once you lose that tax base, our bonds will get degraded. Now the city budget will not be substantial enough to subsidize not only the cops, but the fire department, the sanitation department. Once you start losing Wall Street and people who pay $11,000, $12,000 a month to live on the Upper East Side, you're done.
Let me ask you.
And you go back to the 70s when Gerald Ford said to New York, drop dead.
Okay, but hold on, Arthur. Crisis. But Arthur, just as somebody who is just listening to you, you raise the taxes on wealthy people in this city, maybe a couple percent, right?
They're already 50%.
Yeah, they're already
53%.
And that's exactly my point. They're already paying some of the high. I know, Arthur, but Arthur, they are already paying right at this moment some of the highest taxes in the country. And you think that 1 or 2% is going to cause a mass exodus out of New York?
Haven't you said it already has started?
I just want to be clear that that's what you're saying, because I think that seems pretty extreme.
Because he's also not going to.
U.S. airstrikes on Iranian nuclear facilities send shockwaves across the Middle East. Iran has launched retaliatory attacks in Iraq and Qatar, escalating fears of a wider regional war and a potential flashpoint for direct U.S. involvement. We're going to be talking this morning with Asha Castleberry-Hernandez, one of the nation's leading national security and foreign policy experts, a former senior official in the State Department's Bureau of Near Eastern Affairs under the Biden administration. Castleberry-Hernandez is also a U.S. Army officer with combat zone experience in Iraq, Kuwait, and Jordan. She has briefed the U.S. Senate, published expert analysis on the Middle East, and written the memoir, Why National Security Matters. She's joining Let It Be Known this morning with firsthand military, diplomatic, and strategic insight into this escalating crisis brought on by Donald Trump. Asha, thanks so much for joining the Black Press's Let It Be Known.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Asha, we can jump right into it. First of all, what was your reaction when you heard about the strikes that the president ordered on Iran?
My reaction was quite concerning with regards to potential escalatory behavior. As you can see on the prior to the lead up to these strikes, what you start to see within the American people that many were not supportive of strikes in Iran because they want to avoid a escalatory war. So or just U.S. involvement overall. So it was quite concerning. And I think what we saw play out was that there was a lot of exchanges going on between the Israeli leadership and the United States in terms of making that decision. And as a result, we have seen that the B-52s, still bunker bombers, pretty much penetrated within the Iran, knocking out 3 nuclear sites, and pretty much, according to DOD, pretty much eradicated the 3 sites. So what we're seeing moving forward now is what some of us have already were concerned about was a tit for tat. So as of today, the Iran has fired several missiles targeting U.S. bases, mainly in Qatar and Iraq. And thank God there was an interception. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And so what was the objective in striking Iran sites, and did it achieve anything?
The objective was that what you started to see from the United States is that there was a lot of pressure for Iran to pretty much relinquish its nuclear weapons program. But I have been studying this issue for probably about a good 8 to 10 years. And I will tell you, if we just stayed into the Iran nuclear deal, which was started by President Obama, this would have been all avoided. The Iran nuclear deal worked. And after, yes, absolutely. So after the Obama administration, the Trump administration ripped it up. And as a Biden official, when we came after Trump, we enter back in, but lost the leverage to work with the Iranian leadership. And as a result, it just didn't work. So Iran continued to build its nuclear weapons program. So it was very unfortunate that we withdrew from the Iran deal. And now we have transitioned from moving away from diplomacy and using defense for them to completely relinquish the deal. Now, what makes it different too, that's kind of more scary right now with regards to dealing with Iran, is that Iran has more support in the international community. So what I saw play out in Qatar told me a lot in terms of battlefield confidence. Why? Because they feel more enabled by external support from like China, Russia, North Korea. And you're seeing that play out with regards to in the Security Council and also other additional bilateral, multilateral talks that are happening with Iran. So that is quite concerning. And we have to definitely monitor that alignment between those key players.
Yeah, Asha, you obviously are a foremost expert on what happens there in the Middle East itself. Was this strike legal under international or even U.S. law?
In terms of looking at the Constitution, yes, because of the Commander-in-Chief's authorities. The Commander-in-Chief, in terms of looking at the Constitution, has a lot of latitude, right, as far as how they can conduct airstrikes. President Biden did it. President Obama did it. So there is, in terms of looking at the legality of it, yes, there is. Now, the
okay,
debate, go ahead. Sorry.
No, continue.
Yes. So now, as far as looking at the authorization of use of military force, that's where it does get a little bit more dicey, where any decision that's made by the Commander-in-Chief that can lead to a potential war is definitely potentially could be a violation to constitutional powers as far as a declaration of war. But as of now, President Trump does have a lot of latitude in terms of how he can manage his troops and how he can conduct business in terms of of airstrikes. And that's why it matters on who we put in the Oval Office and what kind of personality sits there, because you're giving them authority with regards to trade policy, access to nuclear codes, and as well as managing the troops.
I have to ask you this. Former Vice President Kamala Harris had said several times during the campaign last year that within 6 months that there would be a war if Trump were elected. He would lead us into war. Was there intelligence as late as last year during the election that told you that certain things would trigger this? Because what we're looking at is Yemen has already said, hey, this is an affront to them as well. Other nations, including Russia, have condemned this attack. Was there some intelligence that perhaps Kamala Harris knew, Joe Biden knew, that if you just did certain things, this was going to happen?
Yes. Well, what you saw prior to the Trump administration is that Iran was in pursuit of malign activities throughout the Middle East region, whether it's conventional, where they were conducting a lot of activities in Yemen, also what we call the Arc of Influence, extending from Tehran all the way to Beirut in Lebanon. So that was definitely an ongoing aggressive behavior orchestrated by Iran. And also, too, that what was quite concerning in terms of what kind of led up to this is what I mentioned before, which is that, and this was stated by the Secretary Tony Blinken, that there is significant evidence that Iran is continuously building up its nuclear pathway to a nuclear program, or building up their first nuclear bomb. So they're getting closer. So when I heard that, I said, whoa, now that Trump is coming in, he's going to do anything he can to stop Iran from becoming a nuclear state. And this is what you're seeing playing out right now.
Wow. How close are we to a full-blown U.S.-Iran war?
Well, as of within the hour, because this develops quickly, President Trump is right now demanding for a ceasefire. Let's see if Iran will come to the table. But again, it's different now because we have Russia, China, and others that are enabling them. But Iran knows, too, that the United States has the asymmetric operational advantage in this conflict. We saw this play out before sometime last year when Iran and Israel were in a tit for tat. Israel actually outperformed Iran because Israel had external support from European powers as well as the United States to continuously endure the conflict. And as a result, Iran had to pull out. So Iran knows that there's some disadvantages with regards to keeping up with Israel and the United States. So that might just eventually bring them to the table. I don't foresee Iran really being in pursuit of a prolonged war between the United States, Israel, and them. Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of talk that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu really goaded Trump into these moves. Is there any indication that Netanyahu, I'm going to put it in the terms that most of our viewers and our readers of the Black Press will say it, is there anything to the fact that Netanyahu played Donald Trump on this?
Well, I would say that Netanyahu definitely shared information, whether it was open sources or intelligence reports, indicating that Iran is getting close to a nuclear, building up its nuclear bomb, and that Netanyahu lost a lot of confidence in the nuclear negotiations that were happening prior to Israeli attacks. So I think for the most part, in terms of information exchange, I would say that Israel has legitimate concerns as far as what they were looking at. And they just delivered it to President Trump. President Trump, at the same time, did not have the politics at his side to conduct airstrikes, but he was influenced by the Israelis and decided to move forward.
Asha, we know when the Middle East is involved, the threat seems all the more heightened at home. from your experience and what you might have heard now and what you might be seeing now. And we see the heightened security around certain areas, certain cities. There was a huge governor's meeting with Homeland Security. What are some of the risks at home right now?
Yes. So first and foremost, the risks are definitely in the region where we have up to 40,000 U.S. troops serving there, as well as diplomats and American civilians. So that is definitely a major concern in terms of what's going on. We're hoping that they are granted full-blown protection as a result of this conflict. Now, looking into domestically, yes, there is a concern. In fact, I've seen this play out when we were in Iraq countering ISIS. When there's ongoing conflicts that are happening in the Middle East region that involves the United States, it also impacts here at home. So during the ISIS campaign, we started to see an uptick of attacks on American people, like for instance, the San Bernardino attacks. We saw the attacks on in Orlando. We saw some attacks happen in New York. So it definitely inflamed some sort of behavior that happens in the United States. And then we just saw it recently happen in Colorado and also in front of the Israeli embassy. So this is definitely a concern. I think it definitely fuels anti-Semitism as well as Islamophobia. And so we should be quite concerned. In fact, in New York City, they have pretty much heightened up the security around strategic areas as responses in other parts of the United States.
And when we think of conflict and war, we think about bombs and bullets and soldiers. But how much of this are you experts like yourself concerned that this could be a cyber attack coming or some sort of infrastructure situation with the internet and things of that nature?
Yes, I'm definitely concerned with the cyber attack issue. In fact, because they're working very closely with the Russians, I wouldn't be surprised that they'll be able to conduct that with the Russians. The Russians are well sophisticated in conducting cyber attacks, and also targeting critical infrastructure is also a concern because of as a result of our airstrikes, we have targeted energy grids as well as other areas of economic interest in Iran. So I wouldn't be surprised that in terms of retaliation, they'll try to do something similar. So yes, definitely, especially online when it comes to retaliating in the United States, it doesn't require boots on the ground or in person. So you're going to see a lot of misinformation, disinformation too, that's going to be running around online, provoking American people, and trying to influence them on information that's not true. They do it really well in trying to create instability with regards to using information against us.
My producer has a great question. I think it's a great question. The role or potential role of Elon Musk in this, in light of his relationship with Donald Trump, we know it's allegedly soured of late, but what role, if any, could someone like him play?
Wow. Well, it's actually all over the place. Well, one, you have to take into account, he has a lot of defense contracts. So take that into account. And then also too, I wouldn't be surprised if Elon Musk is whispering in his ear saying, don't do this. We saw that played out with J.D. Vance, Congresswoman Marjorie Greene. So I could see that also too. He said that about the tariffs when he imposed the tariffs on many countries. So I do see within his camp that they're not really supportive of what's going on in terms of targeting Iran.
And what does this mean? I talked about it yesterday, but what does it mean for oil prices and global markets?
Yes. Well, it's definitely at risk in terms of oil prices and global markets, because if you look at Iran, it definitely has a huge energy market, right? Petroleum. So if, being engaged with them in terms of conflict, it definitely is a big hit. And in fact, prices can go up for gas. So this is another reason why we should not be, being engaged in a conflict with them. So there's just, a lot to take into account in terms of economics, definitely. And stock prices too. I'm sorry. Yeah, stock prices it was just reported, can go up. So that's another concern as well. But some of this could be temporary, depending on how the conflict plays out. If this ceasefire goes through, then this is just a temporary conflict. But if it prolongs itself, then we're going to see definitely the negative consequences in terms of security and economics.
Concerning, if at all, is it that various reports, I haven't independently confirmed them, but at least a dozen Republican lawmakers bought some sort of war stocks Friday, just hours before the strikes.
Interesting. And now, that was a concern prior to, where you had some trading or buying stocks prior to to a significant event. And so I'm pretty sure that those that did that, they were fully aware of what was going to happen with President Trump's decision to strike Iran nuclear facilities. Now, there was a lot of information running around saying some were receiving briefings from the White House and others weren't, but I'm pretty sure those that were in pursuit of, buying stocks, trading stocks, it's as a result of them being fully aware of President Trump's next decision or decision making of the nuclear strikes.
The president, according to many, and it sounds like from his own words, really ignored much of his national security team. You wrote a book, Why National Security Matters. Tell us briefly why national security matters based on what you wrote in the book.
Yes. Well, I wrote the book as a result of the rise of populism that happened in 2015, where I saw amongst a lot of Americans, there was a rejection towards the international community, international institutions, immigrants, you name it. And there was this like fear about the world. And I felt like that we could not afford to think that way because we're more interconnected with the world. And a perfect example of that is online cybersecurity, COVID-19, which came away from China, climate change. So we, again, are a lot more interconnected. So I wanted to use a book to show how these global trends impact us at home. And we cannot afford to have an isolated mentality. And on top of that, when we put people in position, whether it's in Congress, Senate, or in the presidency especially, we want to vote for people that know what they're doing, that understand these global issues, so they could better prepare the American people, and not just with cooperation or protecting from threats, but also being competitive. So this is one reason why I decided to. It's like an educational tool to combat that isolated attitude and also to educate them about where we're going in the 21st century involving national security, foreign policy.
Wow, folks got to get your book and read about that, even some more. That is some interesting stuff, especially in light of what's going on. Again, my producer, we are hearing lawmakers like Marjorie Taylor Greene are really loud about their objections to this. We saw the Supreme Court today hand him another victory when it comes to immigration. Everyone from all sides seemed to be at least uneasy with this president. How do you stop this train from rolling along the way it has been?
Well, it has to come. Right. Well, it has to come from the American people. The American people are starting to come out more to address the concerns. They're out there protesting. They have to pay attention to the political dynamics. Like, for instance, you don't have the House right now to check and balance the presidency. You don't have the Senate. You have to do something about it now that you don't. You're very close in the House as well. So no more complacency. And now we have to go beyond that and get activated, work very closely with your elected officials, mobilize together in order to make change. I really do think it has to come from the American people, because you don't have the legislative branch to check and balance the executive branch. And as you can see with the courts, yes, a lot of the local courts, there are some judges that are opposing some of these decisions that are coming out of the executive branch. But as soon as it makes it to Supreme Court, they are more likely to support the commander in chief or the president's decision. So again, I will focus on what working very closely with the legislative branch, and also commanding more power as far as mobilizing together. The American people can make a difference working together right now.
At the top, before we let you go, we really appreciate your time, Asa Castleberry-Hernandez. At the top, I read off your experience. I mean, you have rich, real experience, tons of experience in this. This administration has so many people in these key positions with little or no experience, including this 22-year-old we've been hearing about in Homeland Security. How dangerous is it to have? He's a former grocery clerk. How dangerous is it to have such inexperience in these positions?
Well, I mean, as you can see right now, that's already playing out in other positions, right? Look at the Secretary of Defense, and he's pretty much endorsing everything that President Trump is pretty much wants. It's not like you see a General Mattis or a General McMaster with significant experiences who are pushed back, or even Secretary Esper. So inexperiences right now make them more prone to support President Trump's decision making. So it is quite concerning, especially when we compare it to the first administration.
Wow. And in light of that, and I'll let you go after this, how vulnerable are we? As vulnerable as we've been in a long time, or maybe are we as vulnerable as we've ever been with all this inexperience?
No, we're vulnerable, and it's not just the inexperiences, it's our position in the world right now, where the world is learning how to not work with us no more. It's going to definitely impact our economy. We are risking our military troops, our security. It's everywhere. And then look at the divestment in our national security agencies, as well as pushing a bill that pretty much takes away social safety net programs, which is totally different from what President Trump used to support in his first administration, where he was like, okay, we're going to learn how to be a competitive country. Now it's like, no, I don't even embrace the principle of American competition. I'm willing to even take away social safety nets from looking at Medicaid, Medicare, and the veterans community, which I'm part of. So it's definitely, in my opinion, a lot more dangerous.
Wow. Asa Castleberry-Hernandez, a former a U.S. Army officer with combat zone experience, foreign affairs under the Biden administration. So much experience in this topic. We really appreciate you joining the Black Press. Thank you so much, Asha.
You're welcome.
Thanks for joining us, folks.